Rand Paul, who unfortunately is fully recovered. Excuse me, what did I say? You gave me the list of what everybody said about we'll get to that in a second. And there's a bunch more, right?
You have them, right?
Well, I had a tweet. I can find it.
Yeah. All right, well, we'll start with the sound. So Rand Paul, there was actually a period of time where this dude was like on the cover of Time magazine. And there was this idea, it was another one of these delusional libertarian fads. I'll say this. His father has all sorts of, to be generous, weird beliefs. And his ideas about how the economy works, society works, black people writ large are terrible. But he's an honorable old crackpot. And he was right about a lot of wars. And he's kind of likable in like a ornery old crazy bastard sense who might have potentially, I'm just speculating, like a weird reading of World War II. Rand came along. He's got none of his dad's charm. None of his dad's sort of like crackpot, somewhat integrity. He said a few good things about Yemen, and he with Bernie was the only one recently to vote to protect the Iran deal. So I'll give him that. But basically, he's trash, and I'm disappointed to see him back. And last night, he did what he's best at, which is a useless public gesture, of which, of course, he's complicit. Like, he's whining about the deficit, so he's going to do a fake government shutdown about the deficits. He just voted for that mass deficit expanding tax redistribution to the ultra wealthy. So even by his logic, he's being hypocritical. But whatever. Let's take in some Rand Paul on the Senate floor.
So I think this has been a very useful debate, and my hope is that those who mutter and say, gosh, why are we having to do this so late at night, will say, why do we do it at all this way? And why can't next year we do it in a better way? Or why can't we begin to do the process of actually sending bills through committee and debating them in a normal fashion? So I, for one, think that this is an important debate and that the future of our country hinges on how much debt we're accumulating. And I hope those who look at this bill, who actually truly do believe that debt is a problem, will consider saying enough's enough and I'm not voting for more debt.
So basically, Rand Paul held up. He caused a temporary government shutdown last night. He didn't even wait a full night of doing it, basically. I think it was only a couple of hours, or did it go through the evening? It was a useless, sanctimonious gesture, which he topped off with that useless, sanctimonious speech. But amazingly, there was actually some good that came out of it, which was the responses from some of his fellow Republicans. And I'll start. They're all pretty good, but we'll work our way to the best. John Thune, Republican. Is he North or South Dakota, Matt? Do you know?
Must be South.
I think, okay, South Dakota Republican John Thune of the Rand Paul filibuster, government shutdown. A colossal waste of time. Richard Shelby, Republican of Alabama. He's tilting at windmills.
Don Quixote.
Do you think he ever read Don Quixote, or is that just in the parlance?
Maybe.
Yeah, I remember I read Don Quixote while I was contemplating ways of keeping
Donahue.
Donahue was a very wise man. Why are you entering around the front door? Senator Tillis, North Carolina, I believe. You can make a point all you want, but points are forgotten. There's not a whole of history books about the points, about the great points of the American Senate. A little more clunky, but fair enough.
I think that must have been a whole lot of history books about the great points.
Right, but it was a little truncated. All right, and now I think we have... This quote is awesome because, like, I remember we did the reenactment on the Michael Brooks show of Rand Paul getting his ass beat by his neighbor. And what was great was that the whole premise of the joke was that there wasn't any spin on it. There was no, like, oh, what's the angle here? The angle here was that everybody will enjoy a auditory reenactment of Rand Paul getting his ass beat. And a lot of people came, I definitely had people on Twitter, I would say some well-intentioned but far too soft liberals who are going to end up getting us all into gas chambers because they're not even tough enough to joke about Rand Paul getting beat, were like, well, that's not right. No one should be hurt. And then, of course, a couple of libertarians being like, oh, so he should be hurt because of his ideas. Upon which I promptly responded, yes. No, I'm just kidding. I don't want Rand Paul's ribs to be cracked, but I will
argue that it wouldn't be helpful.
But I can't argue that it isn't funny. I'll start even more simply.
We would never advocate giving Rand Paul a swirly and shoving him in a locker. That would be terrible.
No, but I would say that maybe if that happened to him a lot more in high school, it would have been good. Or maybe it happened too many times. I don't know. I don't know what the solution is with Rand. I mean, Ben Shapiro's the obvious should just have been left in a locker. I don't know what the solution to Rand Paul is. But this is Representative Charlie Dent. He's supposedly a moderate Republican from Pennsylvania. I'm assuming that he's a pretty awful politician. But let me tell you something. Combined with the fact that probably he's called a moderate, I'm assuming because he's probably like technically pro-choice or something. So he must have like a handful of positions that aren't offensive. And this quote has just shot him up to what, for me, like he's probably in my top 10th of favorite Congress people. Charlie Dent. When Rand Paul pulls a stunt like this, it's easy to understand why it's difficult to be Rand Paul's next door neighbor. Bravo. Mwah. Not only is that a great line, that creates so much opening for us to do the next Rand Paul gets beat by his neighbor sketch.
Yeah, it actually felt transgressive a little bit when we did it, and now I feel like I don't know, it's like
Gotta raise the bar.
We did a sketch on a leftist politics comedy show in Brooklyn. This guy's essentially a colleague from the same party. He was like, no, I'm not even. Seriously.
Easy to see why someone would break his ribs.
Easy to see why someone would tackle him while he's on his ride lawnmower and pummel him to the ground. Like it's actually, when you think about it, it's actually kind of messed up. Like it's pretty. Like he didn't even get like punched in the face. He could have been
beaten
killed.
with an inch of his life.
He got beat with an inch of his life.
Could have had a rib puncture along.
Yeah, he's like talked for months. Like in his first public statements from him and his wife were like, "It's really mean that people were laughing about me being hurt," and this guy's just like, "No, but seriously, I."
Like it's barely okay for us to say it.
No, now
Apparently
it's very okay for us to say it. That's the point. That's why
Just
it's
gave him comedic license to say whatever he wants now.
The erosion of norms has its upsides.
That'd be so awesome if when Charlie Dent passed Ryan, like if he or Paul, if they ever passed, he's just like.
Or just make lawnmowers.
Hey, Rand, what's going on with your lawn, buddy? It's not looking very well. Don't you need to take care of it? You know how your neighbor feels about a mess. I still am. I really would like to know. It's been really impressive how well they've kept the origin of that feud under wraps.
Yeah, it'd be nice to do like what's that Netflix documentary, the
Wormwood, like an Errol Morris
style recreation of all these different things.
And
who would play Rand Paul though? Think on it.
Maybe like Bradley Cooper with a perm.
Yeah, like that. Bradley Cooper would love to play that role. He would be like, "I'm stretching," and then the neighbor would be like Mark Ruffalo. Get like seriously out of shape, and you know that Errol Morris would do a lot of work with that lawnmower sound. It'd be like vroom, 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 vroom.
Slow motion blades.
Slow motion blades. Vroom, 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 vroom.
They do a reenactment every time, every single episode. It's a different part of the beatdown.
This needs to be made.
Yeah, like
and then the final episode would be the one that finally showed the full thing uninterrupted. It would be like it would be like you'd get milliseconds of it, and then finally in the last one, when the whole puzzle came together, we could watch
some like animated ribs just like cracking.
Well, it's like in Wormwood, it's like, what does it mean to fall out of a window? What does it mean to fall? It's like,
what does it mean to get tackled on a lawnmower? How do you get tackled on a lawnmower?
So you leave Congress, you just voted to strip millions of people of their health care and cause their deaths prematurely, and you're on your lawnmower and your bitch wife won't leave you alone, so you get some peace and quiet. And then what does it mean when your neighbor, in a fit of Herculean strength, that's the other thing too, is you never underestimate the raw physical power and rage of an enraged 50-something like wealthy white
Suburbanite.
Oh yeah, those guys, like, they get, you know what, like, we knock them a lot for being soft, but actually, like, I have never seen anybody in my life, and I've been in a fair amount of environments, but some guy like 50-something like upset at a barbecue is like, okay,
Yeah.
whatever you need.
They've got it all bottled up inside because bourgeois life is so emasculating, you know?
That's right. It's like Mitt Romney should be cast in a movie where in the final scene he just like beats a bunch of people to death with a golf club. Like, he's just like, oh, okay. I don't want to take it anymore.
Like puts the bodies on the car elevator and like just.
Honey, I'm working.
The one detail that I feel like it's glossed over is that, like, Rand Paul is like 5'8". He's not a big guy, and his neighbor is also 5'8". So it's
That's
like these
what I'm
two little
saying.
guys like
But that's
duking
what
it
I'm
out.
saying. It's even more impressive.
Jockey fight.
It's But that's even more impressive that the guy like was so strong. Like, I still want to have a round table with like who do we have? It was Ronnie Casseroles. From the founder of the co-founder of the armed wing of the African National Congress.
Maybe that Palestinian activist that's like arrested right now.
Yeah, the young Palestinian activist. The Palestinian activist has been arrested right now, and maybe like somebody from Sinn Féin, and then the guy who cracked Rand Paul's ribs, and we could have like a round table on resistance and liberation.
Tactical violence.
It would be so
Yay
funny,
or
like
nay?
Ronnie Casseroles is just like, yes, in South Africa we smuggled in ANC literature in the 70s, but I'm much more interested in hearing about when you finally decided to tackle Rand Paul.
That morning when you heard the lawnmower
When you
blades
heard
going.
it really should be an Errol Morris film. Adam Curtis would have to be less linear.
And then
Adam-
a funny thing happened.
No, Adam Curtis
And
would
then
be
a
like,
funny thing happened.
And then
Rand Paul
everything-
got his ribs cracked, and everyone laughed.
and everything started making sense again.
We start in Damascus.
His first positive film. He's like, there's an experiment going on in Kurdish Syria. They're believing in decentralized power because of the writings of a academic in Vermont. Across the world, Rand Paul, the most annoying United States senator in history, is tackled. All of a sudden, up was down, but people liked it.
That's one for documentary now. It's two for documentary now, actually. Someone called Fred Armisen.
Who's the or we could just go really old school and primitive and just do the Michael Moore version, and it could just literally be us be like, don't export jobs overseas and check Rand Paul getting his ribs cracked, dude.
Actually, Mike Hanna narrating a documentary would be a good fill-in for Adam Curtis.
Mike Hanna. Mike Hanna might actually do that. Or like a Mike Hanna CNN report. Like, we're here now in Rand Paul's yard where his ribs have been cracked. And I must confess, Michael, it's hard not to laugh.
And I must say, there's some edges trimmed a bit more cleanly.
Charlie Dent just gave us an excuse to spend 15 minutes of airtime joking about all of the, not only the ways in which it's funny that he got his ribs cracked, but the way, like the different artistic inspirations.
It's more than most Congress people have done for us.
That's exactly right.
It's what we were saying. He only said this because he's not seeking re-election. Like, more people just get in, do your bit, and get out and talk shit about Rand Paul.
I'm exclusively in Congress too.
If that's why everyone was actually
Justify.
resigning. Like,
I just wanted to say that Rand Paul is the most annoying person I've ever met in my life.
If you elect me to New Jersey 6th District, I promise to just troll Rand Paul.
I'm glad that he got his ribs cracked, and then you do the Arizona guy style. Mic drop.